Okie dokie. Well, fabulous Fridays. Good morning to everybody. Just making sure you can see the screen. Is it there, Carrie? Or Scott, can you see it?
It is there. Looks good.
Fabulous Fridays?
Yep, it's up.
Okay, well, very good. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. I know I tried to be a little humor there in the chat room by saying fabulous Fridays, and that was my attempt at a Halloween joke, but you do the best you can. Well, this morning we're going to have some exciting programs, and it's who gets grandma's yellow pie plate and grandpa's pocket watch. And I must confess, I was looking at the names of the participants because I thought, this is probably one of those programs that we will have more women than men. Now, why do I think that? Well, I have people tell me that men, they're just not as emotional about some of their things, and women are. Well, I've discovered in some of my public meetings that what we've got is everybody has personal items that they are concerned about. We want to encourage you to use the chat room. I've been going back over comments that people make and questions that they have. So do take advantage of that. And I see that we're starting a little bit early this morning. And so I feel that we should give other people that want to come in, at least my clock doesn't say is quite 10. So I want to give everybody a chance to get in. So if you need a quick break, why don't you just jump up, do some exercise, do something, and we'll make sure that at the top of the hour, we will get started on who gets grandma's yellow pie plate and grandpa's pocket watch. And of course, if anybody has questions that they would like to ask, they could enter those into the chat box, and Carrie can get those to me, and we could just answer a few of those before we get started this morning. Of course, I could share with you my evening last night. I had the opportunity to do one of the convening sessions for the Montana Community Foundation. So we spent about an hour and a half talking about the different aspects of estate planning, and it was really great. They had lots of questions, and I discovered a lot about local community foundations that are in some cases aligned with, and there's another word for it, but they're an affiliate. That's it. They're affiliate of the Montana Community Foundation. And of course, for the programs this week, for Fabulous Fridays, we are having the 4-H Center and the Montana 4-H Foundation being our sponsors. So it's fun to have different people that are involved. Next week, if you have some relatives that are interested, we're going to have another Fabulous Fridays. And the week after that, AARP in Montana is going to have what they call one of their tele-town halls. And what they do is call up people, and people have the opportunity to ask questions to me. And of course, since I'm not an attorney, I can't give any kind of legal advice, but I can provide some educational information. So we had one a couple of weeks ago, and golly, I was thrilled to find out that over 1,000 people had stayed on the phone to listen to me talk. And you can imagine me trying to use my hands and talk about what was happening when I'm so used to having my PowerPoint slides to show examples of who gets property when somebody passes away. Well, I can hear the gong, and that means that it's ready for us to start. I just have a trigger here on my screen that says, hey, the webinar is supposed to start. So we'll get that going. Okie dokie.
Excuse me, Marcia, you're muted.
Hello, I'm back. Thanks, Scott, for telling me that I was muted. So if we go back, well, we'll just continue. Marcia's here. And Carrie is the one that has done the website, and she has put together something extra special as well, is we've had some questions from people about having trouble answering the polls. You know, I keep saying, answer the polls. And I find that there's maybe half of you that aren't able to, or, you know, you just don't know the directions. So Carrie put together the examples that we have from the looping slides that shows you how to do it on computer, how to do it on your smartphone, and then also how to change the layout. If you don't like looking at me at a size like this, well, you can increase that. And those directions are at the Fabulous Fridays website. And we want to really say welcome. We now have 264 individuals that have signed up for Fabulous Fridays. So we're just delighted to invite you. And also we now have 17 out-of-staters. And I'm assuming that many of you have relatives in Montana. So, you know, it's kind of neat if you two could get together and say, hey, I had a chance to watch that and you should watch it too. Because then you can talk about what you heard. Now, I did have a comment last time. Who won the contest about what was on the board behind Marcia? Well, nobody did. So what I've done is put up a photograph there of learning in process. And that's what I've got behind me because I thought it would be neat to have amongst all my wildflowers, some branding that MSU has done, MSU Extension. So that's what we're doing. It's learning in process. And that's not only for you, but that's for me, because some of those questions that I've been receiving in the chat room, when I think I know it all, I quickly learn that I don't. So by your asking questions, it teaches me as well when I find out the answers. So learning in progress. Participant engagement tools. Many of you are familiar with this, but what we're going to do is my wildflowers. I like to use those as reminders of different concepts that we'll be talking about. And I have key points that I want you to remember from our Fabulous Fridays. And the second tool that we have are what are called questions or polls. And in this case, I would like to know, what did you do as a result of last week's Fabulous Fridays? Did you review your will? Did you make an appointment with an attorney to have your will written? Did you write a will in your own handwriting? How about to review your will? You could have done that too. Or there's maybe another action that you did as a result of the session. So if that was just as something that you talked about over coffee with someone, or that you called up a relative and said, watch this, whatever you did, I would very much appreciate your sharing that in the chat room. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Okie dokie, what have we got here? What actions did you take? Okay, oh, we've got a vast majority here that have no answer. We do have other actions, but we did have a percent, and let me see how much that is. 11% that did review their will, so that's good. I bet you were doing as I requested, looking for that right of representation. And then other actions, we had 6 people share in the chat room. And Carrie, what kind of responses were we getting there?
One person said, discussed webinar with my parents who had also attended.
Okay, great.
Read some mock guides regarding wills.
Good.
Printed the information to get started on a will.
Okay, great. So you see that maybe that session helped you get going along with doing your estate planning. And so take advantage of that chat room, because that's where we're going to be able to find out some more information. Now, I'm excited today to report that we're going to have another guest from the 4-H Center for Youth Development. And that individual is Scott Francis. And he's going to be talking with us all the way from Virginia this morning. So I feel honored that he's taking time out to help us out with the show today. But we'll get to him later. Now, you know the steer's head, and the steer's head is wanting to steer you. And the main point today is how to distribute your non-titled personal property. So what are we talking about when we say non-titled? Well, you know that we have the owner not being identified with a written document. So a personal property item might be like a checking or savings account, but you've got your name on that. So therefore, we have laws that control what happens. Well, what about those other items? Now, I know there may be some people, and those aren't the people that are attending this session. Those are the people that say, I don't care, I'm going to be gone, let them fight it out. I even had one father say that. He said, I'll let my kids just duke it out. Well, what a legacy to leave, to let your kids fight over. But we're talking, men have guns, they have tools, maybe they've got some books. You know, as women, we may have special dishes, some needlework. And for me now, you see all these wildflowers that I have as far as photographs, those would be something that I would think about leaving to certain individuals. I know when we had one of our specialists pass away years ago, she remembered me with a necklace. And, I treasure that. That was, oh my goodness, more years than I want to admit, but it was a very special thing. So how about this? Did I wake you up? Well, I call this the untold story of the bell. After my mom had passed away, Dad went first, Mom passed away. And when we were cleaning out the house, what did we find but this bell? And what a bell. I mean, I don't even remember it. Many things I can remember, like the dishes, we use those on Thanksgiving and Christmas, but where did the bell come from? Well, this is your contest for today. I don't know for sure when this bell was utilized, but somebody scratched a year inside the bell. So everybody today has the opportunity to take a guess at what year is scratched inside the bell. So you see, anybody can make a guess on that one. And I'll be sharing at the end. So when you're going to make a guess, you need to write that in the chat room before the end of the session, because it won't count if I tell you and then somebody types that year in, right? Okay. Now, here we have an albino hare bell. I talked about the albino fairy slipper, and it is interesting that when you're out searching for flowers and you got your head down on the ground all the time looking around, you have the opportunity to find unusual flowers. And I knew as soon as I saw that one, that's a little bit unusual. So I'm using it to say harebrained ideas, in the sense, some of the methods that families use. And you can object to the term hare bell or harebrained ideas, but it was something I pulled out of the sky there. But when you make verbal or someday promises, what you find is there could be misunderstandings when more than one person has been told that they could have an item. That you may have experienced that in a family. And it may cause additional problems. Let's say the item that you have is broken, it's lost, it gets sold before you die, and you never did tell the person about it. And, you know, it just may be given to another person before that someday arrives with that. And then I've had some people say, well, what I've done, Marcia, is I have put a piece of tape on the item. Okay, well, what happens to masking tape? Sorry, but my experience is it doesn't stay stuck very well. And then some people use those magic marker types of things and they put it on the bottom. Well, what happens then? Well, any kind of tape or something like that is not really legally binding. It may be morally from the perspective that, you know, you're the kids, you come into the home and mom or dad has written your name on things. So you have a sense of that. But oh my goodness, if we have two kids that dad told them they could have it and then they get there and it has a third person's name on there, it's contributing to a sad situation in a family while they're in the process of grieving. And then I found that there were other families said, well, this is what we did. We just had people buy stuff. Well, what happens with that is that you've got a situation where the rich kids buy out everything. And the kids that aren't as well off aren't able to afford things like that. I had another family say what they did was give all the kids Monopoly money. Everybody got the same amount. So what they had to do was bid on the items, and that way everybody had equal opportunity to buy something. I've had other families that said, what we're going to do is a public auction. Yeah, well, you do that, and items tend to go to individuals that are really outside the family. So it depends on the item that you have. Some families go by gender, you know, the girls are first and then the boys. Or they may go by birth order. The oldest kid is the one that gets the first choice. Okay, so what we're doing is thinking about, is there a better way? Oh, and some people say, well, let's just roll the dice. That makes it fair to everybody. Well, not necessarily, but let's keep looking at ways. Oh, another one. One family said what we did was draw numbers from a hat. And my dad talked about they had done that when their parents passed away. And at the time, the parents were living with one of the adult children. And at that point, they really didn't have that much left. And you wouldn't either if you'd raised 16 kids. Yep, my dad came from a family of 16 kids. So you can understand there wasn't much there. But I do remember my aunts and uncles talking about, oh, that was Grandma Anderson's cake thing. It was a cake, pretty, oh, it was really, really nice. And somebody else got a sewing machine and somebody got something, but they drew numbers out of the hat. And that was the order then in which the children, the adult children, got to take the items. And then those of you that like card games, you know, you can take whoever draws the highest one gets the first choice, and they do that. And then they draw again who gets the second choice of things. So there are different ways of handling how people can go in and have things that mom and dad or grandma and grandpa had, but is it the best way? Well, you've got to decide. So what my Fabulous Fridays tip is explore some alternatives to what I'm calling harebrained ideas. Now here we have a pink owl clover, and we want to talk about some of the challenges that transferring this non-title property can cause among a family. And what I've got is a wise old owl that explains. And, you know, when we're facing the death of a family member, it is emotional. You know, there's just no doubt about it. It doesn't matter how old grandma or grandpa was, there's still that grieving process that we go through. And it's different for some people than others. And you think about your possessions. Sometimes we get more emotional about those than talking about financial kinds of things. For example, I have an old nail keg, and I kind of took it apart, put it back together, painted it. And as I was writing my list, I got more emotional than I thought I would, because I've been dealing with this stuff for a lot of years. And there I was, just kind of a tear or two, thinking about, if I gave this to one sister, she would think it's great. She would be like I am. She'd put it in her living room. And my other sister would simply take it out to the dump. So that's where we want to think about the people that we know and the things that we think that they would like to have. And really, we all have different meanings that we attach to things. Different meanings. And sometimes it's whatever the children feel they're entitled to. And this is called different options, but it may be influenced by what the kids did for the parents. It's like the one lady that we had in the will, and she left everything to the daughter because the daughter had been caring for her, and that kept her out of the nursing home. So in this case, mom was leaving the estate to the daughter for that reason. But what I found as I've talked to adult children and things that have happened with estate planning in the past, it's that definition of fair. It varies based on who's looking at it. So I think what children are often wanting to have is a fair process, a process to figure out who gets what. And it is difficult if you're a parent and you have two individuals that would like to have that item. How do you reach a decision about that? Or do you throw your hands up in the air and you say, I just won't decide. I'll let them figure it out. And that might cause a fight, and those kids may not be having Thanksgiving or Christmas together again. So there is a way to handle this. And one way is to say to the individuals that you're thinking about leaving things to, what is important to you? And what do you think or feel about this cup or this bell? No? So that's why emotions can be attached to something. So in this case, with the bell, did I have an emotional attachment to it? No, I didn't, because I couldn't remember mom ever talking about it. And see, that's what happens too, is if you don't do something, the stories are lost. And I don't have a emotional attachment. I just like old things. And if you saw our house, you would understand. Old things all over the place. One person came in and says, oh my, your place looks like a museum. And I didn't really consider that as a compliment, but at least it wasn't dusty. So what happens? Sometimes we keep delaying those decisions until there's a crisis. And the crisis could be moving into a nursing home, and we've got to sell mom's house, so we can't put everything in the nursing home room or the assisted living facility. So we need to do some thinking on our own. And from my perspective, let us be in control of what happens to our things. And there's a story here where we were talking about the situation, and the family shared with me what happened in their situation. They had decided that they had an anvil, and they thought the son should receive the anvil, and they had some dishes, and they thought the daughter should receive those. So they have a Thanksgiving, they're all around the table, and mom and dad are proud, and they've reached this decision. So they tell the son about the anvil and the daughter about the dishes. And both of the kids just looked at their folks like, oh. And so the folks are saying, what? We thought you'd be thrilled. And the daughter says, but Dad, Don't you remember? I used to go out and sit and watch you pound the horseshoes on the anvil. And this was your and I's private time. And I really treasured that. Dad didn't know. And the son, he didn't give a darn about that anvil because he had a wife that loved dishes. So that's what he wanted. So what happened in there is with that communication, although it wasn't necessarily planned, mom and dad were able to give a gift like that after they're gone of those items. Now they could also decide, I'm going to give it away now. And if you've reached that stage where you're ready to start getting rid of some of that stuff, go for it. But don't give away so much that you don't have those surrounding feelings so that you still have some of you there. And then we had one of our ladies that participated in our Women's Week that we used to hold on campus years ago. And she had a Christmas tree star. She had 8 adult children and 16 grandchildren. And this star that always appeared at the top of the Christmas tree was emotional to the family. I don't remember now if it was homemade or what was special about it, but she was just upset in this class about what to do with it. And one of the other ladies came up with the idea, hey, why don't you just give it to them and tell them to take turns? So every 8th year, one of the other children would be able to use the star and tell the family story about that star. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. We could work on sharing as children. Then sometimes we get involved in who has the right to make those decisions. Is it the biological children? Do in-laws or the outlaws have anything to say about that? Well, here's another story from Women's Week. We had a lady there that had real pearls, a real pearl necklace, and this was brought to her by her husband from World War II when he was stationed over in the Philippines or somewhere. And she was just like the other lady. What am I going to do with this one necklace? And we had a lady in the class that I just loved her drawl because she says, honey, what you need to do is have that necklace cut into pieces, and you could give one pearl to each of your grandchildren or each of your children. Whoa, it wasn't even a thought that this lady had. And she just beamed after that idea had been presented by another person. So if we look at what's going on, a wise old owl would say the type of grieving it's not the same as title. Somebody's going to give a certificate of deposit. There's not as an emotional attachment to that as some of those granny's little scissors. I had, what do we call them? The chicken scissors, the tiny little ones. And she used them to clip her embroidery type stuff. So what I'm going to do is now give you some time. And that's 2 minutes. And if you can't do the chat room, I want you to think about it. Figure out an item that either your grandparents have or your parents that have emotional value to you, and explain why you would like to have that item. Okay, so on your mark, get set, think about it, and share it in the chat room. And remember, Carrie and I are the only ones that see the chat room. There won't be anybody else that can figure out, oh, that must be so-and-so in Lewistown or so-and-so in Ekalaka. No, you have anonymity with this. So go ahead and share what has emotional value to you, and I will set my timer. Oops, went past it. Okay, 2 minutes. And it'll seem like a long time to those of you that don't have it, but I already see that we've got one person that has typed in something. So, Carrie, could you share that item with no names?
Yes, just let me get the
Okay.
chat up. There's one person that said jewelry was Spanish design, mother inherited from mother. The family Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Depression glass sugar and creamer from 1904. That was my great grandmother's.
Oh, wow. Yeah, how neat.
Someone says the snowblower. I know, not very well, but I love their snowblower.
We can even have modern items.
My Uncle George's watercolor of Spring Hill College would mean a lot to me. Someone else said an old map of Montana that hung in their entryway. I remembered it ever since I was very little.
Uh-huh.
A branding iron from the homestead in Miles City.
Yes, yes, great.
And the clothes my grandmother made for my dolls.
Oh, right. I've got some of those too. And something that I didn't know that I was going to receive, let's see, take a look at that, is a ring. And this was my grandmother's wedding ring, engagement ring, rather. And I looked up the date when they got married, and it was 1919. And I didn't even know I was going to receive it. It my great aunt remembered that grandma wanted me to have it, so they removed it, and that part of the story wasn't too good, but I do treasure that, and I will hand it down to the next generation as well. Do we have any others in there, Carrie?
Yes, there was one that said my mom's emerald ring.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that one.
One person said my mom's emerald ring.
Okay. So,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
and another person said I inherited a red glass butter dish that belonged to my great grandmother and grandfather from their 50th wedding anniversary.
Yeah. So that's the thing. We all have some of those items, and we just, oh, don't forget. Okay, what is forget-me-nots? Well, we have these different meetings for each individual. So you're talking about maybe this red butter dish, and it has a certain meaning to you, but it doesn't have the same meaning to, of course, maybe your other siblings. And as you know, the treasures I mentioned, they might be viewed as junk. And so, isn't it better that we go through the items and decide? Now, I'm not talking here that we need to list everything in the world that we own, only those things that have emotional value to you. I don't care about the sofa. I don't care about a chair, except I have one that was an old chair and I refinished it myself. I was so proud of that. Well, that one kind of has an emotional value. And I had a coin collection. And I thought, well, what should I do with this? And it turns out I've got some actually nephews, that all of a sudden have discovered money. And I decided the best thing I could start doing is sending them some of those coins and just see if they notice the dates on them. Because 1919, that's worth taking a look at. And don't forget that these things can also be props for telling family stories. I mean, when you have somebody that says, well, this was brought over on the Mayflower, or this was something, the branding iron from the homestead, oh, that's part of history as we look at it. And I told that story already about that one. So I would say, as you look at these statements, which one would you say is closest to your situation? I've not discussed which belongings have meaning for me and why. I expect disagreements about who should get what. My parents have said, divide my personal possessions equally among you. And I'm just not sure how to make fair decisions about personal items. So which one of those describes you the best at this point in time? Because I'm sure after you've had a chance to think about this, you'll have a better handle on what you want to do. Okay, Carrie, what have we got for this particular one? Okay, we've got about 16% that haven't discussed. We've got some that do expect disagreement, and what can we do now to avoid that? And we've got opportunities here to help out not only ourselves, but other folks as well. Now, we're not going to look at this video, but I wanted to let you know about it. My colleague in Minnesota, Marlene Stump, is the originator of Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. And we connected up years ago because she happened to be from Wichita, Kansas, and that's about 4 hours from my hometown. So she came up with a total program and later then did a video. And the video is free. So we've got that listed, the link in the Fabulous Fridays, and it will be there after this session. And you might enjoy taking a look at that because she gets into, okay, let's get down to brass tacks and let's take a look at the items. So what she has is a worksheet for those who are giving away the property and then those that are receiving it. So she's saying you need to describe them. You need to say why it's special to me. And if somebody else received this, how would I feel? Okay. And let's take a look. This is owners of non-title property. So I would take my grandma's ring and I would describe it. It's an opal ring. There's 3 opals in there. And it's special because my grandma wanted me to have it out of 6 grandkids. And I'll have to decide who I want to receive it and why I want that individual to receive it. And I call this the Minnesota approach since Marlene was the one that came up with it. So think about having a worksheet. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Marlene put together is actually a workbook. So you have an opportunity to really get in depth about examining what it is that you want to do, but owners can provide that information. Now, this happens to be a wood lily. Found this one up in Waterton before they had the fires, and it's the Waterton International Peace Park. So how would I use wood? Well, Montana law. Yes. What does Montana law? You would have a paragraph in your will. And this is the legal way to handle how your property is going to be distributed as far as separate listing of tangible personal property. So these are all the items that don't have title. Okay. The paragraph in the will is what gives legal authority for your personal representative to go into the home and start distributing the items. And actually, if somebody took something they weren't supposed to, the personal representative has an obligation to go to that individual and say, this is the separate listing. So when I say it's a separate piece of paper from the will, but the will has to have a paragraph that says, I have a separate listing. And when you go in to have a will written, that attorney that you choose should put that in the will. Even if you don't have one right now, he or she will say, and you're going to do this separate listing. And you're already going to know what the attorney means because you've had this session. And so I mentioned with my grandma's opal ring, you know, who I want to receive that. And when we moved to Montana, well, we found sapphires. And so I had a ring made. And then I've got an 1847 ladle. And so I indicate who I want to receive that. So I dated that and I have my signature on it. And now, because we can put so much on computers, when I want to update this, all I do is go in and find that file. And I was glad that I did that because I'm driving across Montana feeling very good that, oh, I've got all my estate planning done. And I'm driving, and then all of a sudden it hit me. Oh my gosh, the grandfather clock that mom and dad put together. I did not include that on the list. So I went and included that and realized, oh, I've got some other things that have emotional value as well. So every now and then we want to go in and update the list. And that's why I think it's a really good idea to have that dated and signed. And we do have an extension Mont guide that Marlene was kind enough to co-author with me. And it's Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. And you can download that. That'll be available also at our website. And that would be something that you could share with your adult children or your grandchildren, because I bet they have some of the same kinds of things, but haven't yet thought about it. So you would, right, write a separate listing of tangible personal property. Remember, those are the things that do not have a name to them. Now that you know about this separate listing that Montana law allows us to have, would you write one? So that's a pretty simple one. Yes or no, or you already have one. Now, those of you that already have a living trust, I wanted to let you know that Montana law now allows you to have a separate listing that you include with the trust documents. Again, it's not something in there that would have to be changed every time you want to change the list. It's a separate list that you can go in and do. So Carrie's put the results up here, and let's see what we've got. Oh, we've only got 9% of the people already have one. And we've got 38% that says now they're going to do it. And we've got 4% that say nope. And I'd love to know the reason why you're not, if you'd feel comfortable sharing with me, you two. Is it takes too much time? It's too emotional to do, or you just don't want to be bothered with those kinds of things. Now here we have the Jones Columbine. And I don't know if you can tell from this photo, but it's about this tall. Yep. You got to hike 3.5 miles in and up on this scree pile. And I had no, this is a flower I'd been hunting for years. And while we were in Waterton taking a wildflower class, somebody in class said, I know where they are. And so they shared, and off we went. Well, the Jones Columbine makes me think of Jack Jones and his coin collection. Jack has a safe deposit box, and he has it with his brother John, you know, and that's what we tend to do, put somebody else's name as a signer. Okay, then what he did was have a separate listing, and that's part of the will, and he's leaving the coin collection to his sister Susan. Okay, I bet you know what I'm going to ask you, don't you? Who is going to receive the coin collection? Is it going to be John Jones, because he is the joint tenant on the safe deposit box, Or is it going to be Susan Jones because she is listed in the separate listing of tangible personal property? Who receives the coin collection? There's no title on a coin collection. Okay. And this one's easy. You only have two choices. And let's see what you think. Okay, Carrie's got the results for us here. And we've got 20% that say John. We've got 18% that say Susan. And we have 61% that said nothing. Okay, so let's see what happens. Well, the attorneys, at one point, I had half and half. And then we re-examined it and they said, you got to go with the safe deposit box because that's a joint tenancy contract. Oh, so in the process of writing the mock guides, I'm discovering we have two laws that kind of go against one another. And if we're not careful, we could end up having our safe deposit box in somebody's name that says, oh, that's mine. Well, how are John and Susan going to get along after that? So my question for you to just consider is, should your safe deposit box be in joint tenancy with someone else? Often what happens as our parents get older, they ask, oh, can I just add your name to the safe deposit box? We want to make sure that somebody can get in there if something happens to us. And adult children say, sure, that's what I said. Why not? You know, I wasn't paying any attention at that point of my life. Well, if you're not careful, you discover a story like this. Are you setting your surviving joint tenant up for family distrust, temptation, or suspicion? Well, why would I say that? Well, that's because this happened in Butte. What we had was a grandma. And at that time, Montana had an inheritance tax. So you had to pay a tax on anything you inherited. So this grandma had this idea. Okay, what I'm going to do is put, $600,000 in my safe deposit box. And I'm going to have my grandson's name on it, just in case something happens to me. And I've given him directions on who receives what amount of that money. Well, you can see this coming down the road, can't you? They open the safe deposit box and what happens? Nothing is there. So what do people do? Why, they blame that grandson. Of course, he got in there and he took grandma's money. Well, to this day, that grandson says, I did not do that. And you know, grandma was starting to exhibit some signs of Alzheimer's. And so the question was, did it really exist? But the family decided that he's guilty until proven innocent. And simply saying that he didn't do it doesn't mean anything to them. So the idea is, yes, if you have a safe deposit box in your name, and you die, technically it's sealed. So the personal representative would go to the judge and say, hey, we need to have a document that authorizes us to get in the safe deposit box to look for a will. And maybe they would have to drill that out. Maybe it's I don't know what it is now. It used to be $75. So that $75 really could be cheap when it comes to that way. Nobody else can get in there but you. And nobody else can take the items that you have in a safe deposit box. So you need to think about what you've got in that box. If you have somebody else's name on it, would this rise to a temptation or something along those lines? So the fabulous Friday's tip from the Jones Columbine is just consider, If you've got your box in joint tenancy, are you aware of the consequences? Well, my observation from the fairy slipper is it's about time to wrap it up because we want to hear from our guest today. And I hope I steered you to how Montana law is going to handle the distribution of your non-title personal property. And if you don't have a memory like this cute little elephant's head, and people ask me, where do I find these? You can find these in Yellowstone Park where there seems to be water standing, or even along some of the fields in June or July, depending on what part of the state. We've got 48 different mock guides, and you can go to our website and check on the ones that you're interested in. And don't forget, these mock guides are available at the county offices as well as the reservation offices. Also, questions, put them in the chat panel, and we will get to those after we've had a chance to take a peek at our guests today. So, don't forget about next week. We're going to look at the difference between a revocable living trust and a testamentary trust. That'll be the topic for Fabulous Fridays on November the 5th. Now, let's take a look. We have a special guest. And Scott, are you with us? I hope still.
Yes,
Scott?
I am.
Oh, good, good. So you're on your phone, right? So you're not going to show us your handsome face or anything, are you?
Well, I'll try. I'm not going to guarantee anything.
Okay, so what I'll do is stop sharing so that they can see you when you're talking. So everybody, I want you to meet Scott Francis. And he is the outdoor, I call him a specialist, and he does a lot of different kinds of things. So first of all, I'll have him share what he does in the 4-H Center. You're on.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to shut my video off. I'm having a bad connection here, so I'm going to shut the video off. But thank you very much for having me. This was wonderful. What a great topic that you gave today. That was very interesting and informative. I appreciate that. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Francis, the Outdoor Ed Coordinator at the Montana 4-H Center for Youth Development. And I'm probably the luckiest guy on staff there at the state office because I get to do basically everything that I love to do personally. I get to be in charge of it. So that's really fun. And what my program is in outdoor education is shooting sports, fishing, wildlife and conservation, any type of outdoor education activity. The 4-H camp try to provide resources and materials that can be used. And then anything on the North American model for conservation is something that I work really, really hard to try to provide modules and information that can be used for the 4-H participants around the state. And the thing that we're in the kid business, and we're in the business for providing our 4-H youth and families in positive youth development activities, and outdoor education is just one of those tools. So it's a very gratifying and a very, very fun area to be in charge of.
Well, that sounds like you think you have the ideal job. Well, I think I have the ideal job. But I think I heard you're a retired teacher.
I am. I'm a retired science and math teacher from Manhattan High School. I spent 26 of my 30 years in Manhattan and was a science and math teacher and a coach. And what I did and what I'm offering now is a lot of my background in biology and environmental sciences and earth science. A lot of that is what I offer now. We also had the last few years that I taught, we had a Scholastic Clay Target shotgun program and also a National Archery in the Schools program that we ran in Manhattan, which coincide very well with 4-H shooting sports.
Oh, well, I had the opportunity to hear about the things that Scott does at our 4-H Foundation meeting. And one of the things he talked about that they're doing there is a special event that is June the 11th, I believe. Tell us about that.
On June 11th, 2022, it's a Saturday. The Montana 4-H Center and the Outdoor Ed program is hosting an outdoor education field day at the Gallatin County Regional Park off of Oak Street there by, what is it, the Dinosaur Park, I think is what they call that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are going to be having is a field day to provide the youth and the public with activities regarding fly fishing. We're going to have archery, air gun. We are going to do wildlife identification, camping equipment, hunting equipment. We're going to be blessed to have 2 special guests with us that day. Mr. Stephen Ranella, the meat eater, is going to be participating with his crew, and Mr. Randy Newberg and his crew are going to be participating as well, offering all kinds of experiences to educate the youth in our area about 4-H activities and outdoor ed activities that are available. And I'm really, really excited about this. This is going to be an opportunity where we can hopefully get more people interested in the outdoors, and potentially that we can get more adults that would be willing to become 4-H leaders and become involved in our program, because the fact of it is, if we need to have volunteer help in order for us to do these great programs. So that's kind of another of our ulterior motives with this. And you know, we've had a lot of research present in the last 10 years or so that a lot of our youth are deficient in outdoor education activities and just being outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of our youth today spend a whole lot of time in front of a computer or a Game Boy or an Xbox or whatever, and we want to provide them some examples of what they can do outside and understand how fun it is. So I feel really, really excited about this and think it's going to be a pretty fantastic program.
Yes, and I can see the difference that it makes. I'm thinking of my nephew, and he grew up in, like me, the flatlands of Kansas. And so for his high school graduation, I brought him out to Montana. We went hiking, we went fishing, and he just became in love with this part of the country. And he got to live in Jackson Hole for quite a period of time. And so I think it's going to be a great. Do you have any idea how many to expect or prepare for?
Well, we're hoping for 250. That's our goal,
Uh-huh.
but we're gonna hit the advertising quite hard. We're gonna use Facebook and all of the other fancy stuff that I know nothing of, that I'm gonna rely on the other folks at the 4-H office to help me. But we're inviting our neighboring counties to, Broadwater, Madison Park, and Marr County to come and join us, because we're all involved, and we